I'm just gonna say, I tried making this intro like a few times already, and the one time I was on a roll, I was vibing, I was doing shit properly, my tablet tells me that I ran out of space. So, fuck, you know? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is me, ya boy, man who does not know how to sample. And today we're going to be talking about, not Quest for Fire. Why do I still think this album is called Quest for Fire? Stealing Fire. Today we're going to be talking about Stealing Fire, the brand new album by Virtual Riot. And when I say brand new, I mean probably like a month or two old by the time that I release this video, because I do videos really slowly. Released on Monstercat. Yes, that is right, Monstercat is where this album is from. And the reason why it's so surprising for me is because it has been a long time since Virtual Riot released anything on Monstercat, really. I think the last track he did for the label was a remix of Talk About It like 7 or 8 years ago for a Pickborn Nerds remix package. So it's been quite some time since we saw VR on this label. I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I did not expect him to release an album, nor this quickly. I just thought that his one big release would be the Simulation remix package early on in the year, but I am happy that we got another big, massive Virtual Riot project. And without further ado, let us talk about it, because there are so many things that I want to talk about in this album, and why not do it like right now? Okay, let's just do it. I'm so good with my transitions. Now, first things first, we need to talk about what is probably the biggest thing about this album, and that is its theme, its story. When I did that songs that I've heard video and I included, I think it's Giving to You, I think that's the name of the song, I talked about how there is a sample in it that's the one used in the Prodigy's track Spitfire. That is not a coincidence. This album is filled with samples from so many different artists. People have quickly pointed out samples from artists like Skrillex, Burial, Disclosure, The Prodigy, elements of certain tracks that made them remind them of songs from Excision, Kill the Noise, Knife Party. So many different names from so many different genres of EDM. Now, Virtual Riot has actually come out and talked about why this is the case. And the reason why I know about this is because I was watching the live reaction from Naughty Snap and people kept spamming that on his live chat, like if it was a fucking copy pasta. See, according to Virtual Riot, and I have the statement right here, and I don't want to accidentally get anything wrong, Virtual Riot talks about how when you are inspired by other people's works, you do tend to take parts from their tracks, you do tend to feel inspired from them. That is the idea of stealing fire that he presents with this album. However, he also stresses the importance of doing this correctly, of not just ripping people off or copying them word for word, and talks about how if you do this correctly, what you're pretty much doing is spreading fire. You're spreading that inspiration onto other people that will feel inspired by that and make their own art, make their own music, make their own whatever they want to make. I really like this message coming from Virtual Riot. I believe that it is important to, recognize that, you do feel inspired by people around you, and that is what shapes how your art looks, how your music sounds, how your drawings are made. But that it is also very important to do this correctly, not just be a rip-off like it is the case so much with EDM. So many artists out there that pretty much just copy a specific style or specific sound just because that is what is popular. Again, really enjoyed the message that Virtual Riot is trying to go for with this album. So why not see what this album is about and how he is able to propagate this fire, how he's able to steal this fire and then spread it as well. Now, this album starts with probably one of the best ever intros I have heard for an EDM album, that being Embark, a cinematic, orchestral, ambient track that really sets the mood well for what the rest of the album is going for. The strings are beautiful. The suspense building at the midpoint of the track is amazing. It really does make you feel unsettled, but at the same time hyped. And the way that it goes from itself into the title track, into Stealing Fire, again, amazing intro for an EDM album. The first track, Stealing Fire, again the title track, really does showcase that sort of inspiration that Virtual Riot mentioned. Really do hear the Skrillex in him. I really, when listening to this track, thought of the track Leave Me Like This from, I believe, Quest for Fire, which was one of the tracks that I really liked off of that album. So I really like to see how, you know, Virtual Riot is able to make a song sound like that, but still sound like Virtual Riot. From Stealing Fire up until the first interlude, you really do see Virtual Riot being more experimental with his sound, being more creative into how he approaches music production. And you really do see that with some of the tracks going forward. For example, the track Dino Killer. Can I just talk about a bit about the track Dino Killer? Because like I've seen some people say apparently that this is supposed to be like a jab at Excision, and I'm just confused as to why people would think that. Because, first of all, I haven't seen anything that would point at Virtual Riot hating on Excision. And second of all, if this was an Excision diss track, you know damn well that he would have already done what he did with Getter, going onto the studio, putting up his voice modulation, and being like, I heard you were talking shit on your album. Get your facts straight. But going back into the track, really the sound of it, how intense it is, and that final part where it just gets progressively slower and slower and slower, like that part hyped me the fuck up. I did not know that you could do that in the song. Like, it sounds obvious. Oh yeah, you just slow it down every like 8 bars to have the song be more intense. Like, what the hell? Apparently this was like an experiment that VR did to see how slow he could headbang. And yeah, I think the experiment was a success. I don't think you need to do any more trials or something. Oh, and before I forget, the fucking build-ups? Like, I did not know that a dude just telling me not yet could hype me up this fucking much. Holy shit. Another track that really showcases this more experimental side from Virtual Riot is the following track, Star Destroyer. The first drop is like a mix between like traditional dubstep elements and like more tribal sounds and like drums and everything. And the first drop is this sort of like stop and go nature, which I really enjoy. But the second half is probably one of the craziest genre mashups of all time, because motherfucker decided to make a drop that is Jersey Club Mongolian throat singing into like stutter house, into like bass house. Like, how do you even think of something like this? I don't know what came through his mind when making that. Can he teach me how to do that shit? Like, that sounds hard. These are the sort of tracks that really showcase what this album is about and the talent of Virtual Riot and really how crazy he can go. Then I believe we have that first single. Let me just check here real quick. Yeah, we do have Giving to You, which, like I said in my songs that I've heard video, I know I keep referencing that so fucking much. I do not mean that. Like I said, it's a pretty solid song. I really like how it mixes both Virtual Riot and Rez's elements. And the vocals are really good, even if I do kind of agree that they could probably be a little bit used more on that first half. But again, I really do like how it sounds like. And then right before the first interlude, you have the last or second to last, I think it was the last single of the album, and that was Scorched Earth, which, fun fact, was actually the track that made me look up what that type of techno was, because I've seen it being used so many times in the past few months, and I really wanted to know what it was called. Apparently, it's called Peak Time Techno, but I'll probably just keep calling it Dominate VIP by Space Lasers because that's just how it got ingrained into my mind. Again, another great example of Virtual Riot experimenting with various different genres and various different sounds. But one thing in common about this first half is the fact that you still hear that sort of Virtual Riot-esque sound in it. It's not completely different from what he normally does, which is something that I enjoy because it still has that little touch of familiarity, like some of those things that you can immediately recognize, being like, oh yeah, that is this artist. And, you can still enjoy them, trying new things. Then you get into the second half of this album, right after that first interlude. And this is where I see Virtual Riot kinda knowing his strengths and really applying them in full force. And a great example of that is, again, the first track right after the interlude, Believe What You Want. That is like a traditional ass fucking Virtual Riot song from beginning to end, even having a little reference to one of his past remixes. I believe it was like a 2019 version of one of his older remixes. A nice little callback for those that are really paying attention. Really one of those very traditional bro step Virtual Riot songs. This is where I do notice one point that I've seen as criticism towards this album, and I kind of see it more present on this second half, which is the fact that a lot of these tracks have a lot of ideas being thrown into them, but they don't really, mesh together or are like undercooked or, could probably have been developed a little bit better. Now, there are some tracks in which I don't really see this. For example, the track Reconnect, I see it as, again, a very, very good bro step song from VR, something that would, in my opinion, probably sound better if it was in simulation, but probably it's like a sort of Porter Robinson Shepherdess type of situation in which Virtual Riot probably didn't feel like it fit the tone of the album. And then there's also tracks like Vroom, for example, which when I was listening this with the Turbo Fury for the first time, he kind of talked to me as this being like a sort of mid-tempo show up from his German Engineering EP, and I can definitely notice that. I really like how some of the basses truly do sound like cars revving up, hence the name of the track. But I also do believe that this, in the same album that has tracks like Giving to You, kind of does feel a bit weird, because if you don't like Vroom, like Giving to You is like right there. So, Vroom just has this sort of weird thing about it because of the fact that it's in the same project as that Raz One True God collaboration. Now, the only track that I really see this sort of criticism about there being way too many ideas and not enough time to develop them is in the track Ridiculous. Because there's so many things happening, it would benefit so much if the track just was a little bit longer or let those parts be developed a bit more. But I guess, I know why it is like this. I mean, the track is called Ridiculous. It's supposed to be as ridiculous as possible. So in this situation, I can kind of let it slide, even if I really, really, really wanted that sort of final melodic bit right at the end to just be be more prominent. That part was so fucking good. I was fucking levitating when that part dropped. And then it just ends. And I was like, well, shit, why? Why did you end it? I was fucking vibing so much. Come on, like, VIP, have that thing be the whole song. I don't care. Just do something with that part. Now, in the midst of all of this, I know I haven't talked about certain tracks. There's a lot of these tracks that, again, do work well for the concept of the album, do show, Virtual Riot experimenting like Need to Get, or serve as really good callbacks to that sort of older track. Like, for example, Night on Fire, which apparently it's like him finishing an old whip that he had for a long time. Also, I know I haven't been talking much about like the interludes, but they also show that Virtual Riot is an amazing songwriter in terms of outside of EDM. Great composition, great feeling, great environment, and that is again something that you notice on tracks like, for example, what was the name of it again? New Energy, which do serve a really good purpose. Like, New Energy, I believe is actually really well placed right after Believe What You Want, because you've got this sort of crazy experimentation before that first interlude. Then you have Believe What You Want being this sort of intense, hard-hitting track. And then you have New Energy, just very relaxing, more future garagey, which is again a genre that Virtual Riot knows how to do really, really, really fucking well. Even though I say that second part right after that interlude is the more Virtual Riot-esque part, again, you do see the room for experimenting. You do see the room of him being more creative, trying new things, making new sorts of sounds, and again, New Energy is a prime example of that. So there's nothing really much to talk about this album other than when I was listening to that Naughty Step review, that Naughty Step live reaction, I actually started to believe less and less that sort of like chaotic nature that a lot of people were talking about. So really, this is a very solid album from beginning to end. But as you've probably noticed with me talking about these tracks, there is one track that I still haven't talked about, and the reason why might be surprising to a lot of you.
Go steady while you pave your way.
Yes, that is right. In an album filled with some of the most creative tracks Virtual Riot has ever done, some of the hardest tracks Virtual Riot has ever done, and a drum and bass song that, if you know me, you would probably think would be my favorite, the track I actually enjoyed the most and really resonated with the most is Holding On to Smoke with Raven Gray. And in fact, that last name is the reason why I love this song so much, or at least one of the reasons. Those vocals are some of the most beautiful, stunning vocals I have ever heard in an EDM song or in an electronic song in general. The way that they can properly show the emotion that Raven Gray is trying to portray. Just the trembling in the chorus, the notes that it, oh my god. Everything about that vocal performance make this already one of the best tracks of this year. But on top of that, you have a very simple instrumental when compared to the rest of the album, but that works so well, like the synergy between it and the vocals. But not just that, the drop being this sort of like more chill house track that reminds me of a lot of Mr. Fiji Ouija out of all artists. The main synth, the progression of the track, how it connects with the previous track, with the interlude being this sort of like stormy weather around it, and how it's just the ambiance around both that and Holding On to Smoke. Everything about this track is just gorgeous. It's definitely one of the best tracks of this year, like a deadass 10 out of 10 would absolutely consider this like up there, one of the best. Just again shows you that you don't need to go over the top with crazy ideas, with crazy sound design, with crazy anything to make an amazing song. You can, and that definitely does help, but sometimes just having a plan, having an idea, and really fine-tuning it to make it sound amazing is enough to make one amazing top of the fucking top quality track. What a track that was, and what a way to finish this album. So speaking of which, what would be my final rating, or at least my final opinion of this album? I, when first listening to it, probably was sharing the opinion of a lot of people saying that this was maybe slightly inferior than Simulation, but I think that they're both sort of kind of neck and neck with each other. Simulation is closer to that sort of more traditional VR style that has already been a staple of dubstep for a long time, but Stealing Fire is again creative, crazy, very, fun to listen to. Like, yes, it has one or two problems, like again, that whole maybe some of the ideas could have been developed better type thing, but it can go through those problems and it can really just rise above them to a point in which I cannot say that this is a bad album at any point, really. I believe that as a final rating, it would be fair for me to give this a sort of 8.5 out of 10. Maybe I would probably call it a 9 as well in the future. It's definitely one of those that has grown on me the more I've listened to the tracks and the more I've understood the context of the album. And again, my favorite track, Holding On to Smoke, that one is an amazing banger. Scorched Earth as well can probably be put up in there. Dino Killer and Star Destroyer. Again, some of the more creative tracks, but on top of that, one of the most simple ones. It's fun. This is why albums are fun. Release more albums. Please, for the love of God, I need content. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that, again, it was up to your enjoyment. I have some ideas. I want to talk about the Zeroth EP that was released a few weeks ago. I want to talk about Crossover for Charity, which has dropped just a few days ago at the time of me recording this video. Like I said in a previous video, I have so many ideas for November and December. I will probably also start making my best of video for this year. Be on the lookout for all of this. I am definitely cooking, even if it doesn't seem like it. And yeah, again, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and see you next time, where I hope I can actually make a video in one take as well. I did that for the fucking KSI video, and now I'm stuttering on my words, and now I'm just kind of losing train of thought. I think something is happening to me, and I don't really like that. Listen.